Welcome to Shin Pony Reads Anthropology by Jason the Human, Chapter 1, Music and Magic. Are you going to eat that? Lyra looked expectantly at the cake that was still on Bonbon's plate. Her roommate lifted a hoof to pull the plate a bit closer to her side of the table. Honestly, Lyra, sorry, but it's just been sitting there and... We just got the sugar cube corner 5 minutes ago, Bonbon said, and excuse me if I was a little shocked by how you inhaled yours. Coming here had been a tradition, something the two of them did every weekend. Mr. and Mrs. Cake were some of the best bakers in Ponyville, if not all of Equestria. For ponies who both love sweets, it was a natural hangout. You think candy and cake are some kind of art form, don't you? It's what I make for a living. Of course there's art to it, Bonbon said. And anyway, I've finally gotten a job interview scheduled with the owners, so before we know it, I might even be working here. That's nice. Will we get free cake then? Lyra asked. Bonbon glared at her. Anyway, I heard you were invited to play at the Grand Galloping Gala this year. That's quite an honor, Bonbon said. She took a single bite of her cake, enjoying it, savoring the flavor, unlike a certain unicorn. Lyra nodded vigorously. Yeah, can you believe it? I'm not too good with formal events, though. I can't imagine why. Bonbon's attention was fixed on some chocolate frosting still hanging off of Lyra's chin. Let's hope it doesn't turn out to be a disaster like last year. What? You heard about that, right? Lyra nodded. I never would have thought Fluttershy had it in her. It's always the quiet ones. Taking another small bite of her cake, Bonbon continued. So, have they told you what pieces you'll be performing? Do you know what you'll be wearing? Lyra shrugged. I don't know. Maybe Rarity. Incoming! They barely heard the buzz of a scooter approaching before it slammed into the table. Bonbon's cake was propelled directly into her face. Lyra attempted unsuccessfully to strike a laugh. Scootaloo, are you sure that's going to be your special talent? Apple Bloom said, walking towards the overturned table with Sweetie Belle at her side. Bonbon gaped at the three fillies, her face covered in frosting. What can I say? Sometimes it's better to finish quickly, Lyra shrugged. By the way, you've got a little something, she lifted a hoof to her own face, right there. Bonbon had already snatched up a napkin and started wiping herself off. Sorry about that, Scootaloo said, shaking her head. She adjusted her helmet. I was going so fast that time. Now I just need to work on my turns. She gave a weak smile. No problem, Lyra said. Bonbon hesitated and took a deep breath. Yes, no problem at all. Lighten up. They're just kids. Remember what it was like trying to get a cutie mark when you were their age? I don't blame them for trying all this crazy stuff. Sweetie Belle's face brightened up. Hey, we never asked you how you got your cutie mark. Your talent is music, isn't it? She said, staring at the golden harp on Lyra's flank. Yeah, actually it took me a long time to get my cutie mark. It was back in Philly school when I lived in Canterlot. I was one of the last in my class to get mine, you know. Lyra lying awake in bed one night. Heartstrings. She'd still been calling herself Heartstrings back then. Had heard her parents talking about her. You know that Heartstrings has been struggling in school. That was her mother. Some unicorns just take longer to learn magic. That's all. Things will come to her in time, she heard her father reply. But what if it doesn't? It's been too long now. No magic, no cutie mark. What if it's all because she's... Heartstrings a unicorn. It's that simple. It'll all come in time. Of course, even though she was a filly, Heartstrings knew that they had been talking about her. Her mother was a Pegasus, but her dad was a unicorn. She had a horn, but she had never been able to use it. The other unicorns in her class have already mastered things like levitation. But she couldn't even lift a feather. She had to agree with her mother. What if she just couldn't learn magic? Her teacher, Indigo Spark, said that it didn't matter. If a pony had a horn, they were a unicorn. There wasn't such a thing as half unicorn. But this wasn't the only time she had overheard her parents have this same conversation, and she just couldn't focus any power through her horn. Cutie marks and magic were still on Heartstring's mind the next day in class. They had been brought to the music room instead of their usual classroom. Today we'll be working with musical instruments. I'd like all of you to pick something out. We're just practicing today, so don't worry about sounding good. Indigo Spark watched his class as they inspected each instrument. Heartstrings tagged along after the rest of her classmates. Would she be any good at this? It looked like there was a tuba, too big. A xylophone? That had a lot of keys. How would she handle that one? There were some drums. Those would be easy. Yes, Bluebell, that one's called a lyre. Heartstrings turned to see the teacher talking to a young navy blue unicorn. It's one of the more difficult instruments. It takes a lot of concentration to focus on moving each string to play even a single song. How does it work? The filly asked. Focus your magic onto each string, and adjust the tension in order to make them vibrate and create sound. Bluebell had already started, and what came out wasn't exactly music, in the strictest definition. Heartstrings winced at the noise and turned to look at the cello. Maybe that one would work. No, it was way too big. I think I'll take a different one, Bluebell said, turning away from the lyre. Something easier. Most of the instruments have already been taken. So much for drums, Heartstrings thought. Wandering around the music room between the other young unicorns who were already trying out their new instruments, Heartstrings finally took a closer look at the lyre. No way. That one would be definitely too hard. Besides, the explanation had made no sense. How were you supposed to create music if you moved each string by itself? If you plucked them in a sequence, moving down the row, it was less of a matter of moving each string and more of something moving through them, plucking each one. A few notes played, soft but clear. A few more. It was beginning to sound like a simple melody. Nothing too complicated, but musical all the same. Heartstring closed her eyes, focusing on the notes. Yes, this is how a lyre was meant to be played. Oh God, stuffy nose. This is making this aggravating. Onwards. My Heartstrings really have a knack for that. Her eyes snapped open. The whole room had gone quiet. She tried to look at the horn on her forehead and saw the edges of a lime green glow. It matched the glow around the lyre. She slowly backed away from the lyre, feeling the eyes of every pony in the room watching her. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. That was truly impressive. I just thought that there was probably a different way to play it. Simpler, Heartwing stammered. There's nothing wrong, Indigo Spark said. Now does every pony have an instrument chosen? Let's begin. Heartstrings stared at the golden instrument, and with some effort, managed to get it to float next to her. She was ecstatic. She felt like getting up and running straight home to tell her parents, but class had already started. While the other colts and fillies struggled to create anything musical, Heartstrings was already grasping how to play this instrument. It was like she was born to play. When class was finally over, she noticed something different about herself, namely, on her back leg. To say the least, her parents were pleased when she returned home that afternoon. Heartstrings thought her mother was going to faint after she saw her daughter's new cutie mark, and she almost did. After hearing a bit of what Heartstrings could do, her father signed her up for music lessons right away. They were saying she was a prodigy. Maybe she was. Heartstrings didn't really care either way. The excitement of being able to do magic was enough for her. It finally looked like Heartstrings was going to grow up to be a perfectly normal unicorn. Is it true what they say about ponies like that? Sweetie Belle asked. When their parents are two different kinds of ponies, I mean. I know it doesn't happen often, but you're great with magic, Lyra. Who knows? It took some practice, but I'm all right now, Lyra replied. And it just goes to show that everybody gets their cutie mark eventually. I'm sure you'll find yours soon enough. Bonbon had finished wiping the cake off her face. It was in a better mood. You know, when I was about your age, that was the first time I ever learned how to use an oven, and... Hey, music might work. Maybe we should try getting our band back together. Come on, Crusaders, Scootaloo said. The three of them disappeared in a yellow, orange, and white blur. What? Bonbon said. I didn't even get a chance to tell my cutie mark story. Kids and their short attention spans. She turned to Lyra. There was a fork hovering in the air in front of Lyra's face, and she was inspecting it with curiosity. She turned at the sound of her name, and the fork dropped to the ground. Huh? Oh, Never mind. Let's go home. Music played softly in the distance, a familiar sound in the darkness. Did she know this song? She couldn't name it. Then, a figure, but it wasn't a pony. That much was clear. It was... Yes! Lyra started to move towards it for a better look. The darkness was fading away so she could start to make out the details. She had just a glimpse before. She hit the bedroom floor with a thud, giving her a rude awakening from the dream. But she still had the image in her mind. Lyra stared up at the ceiling. Her back on the floor, her legs sticking straight up in the air. The covers from her bed was still partially draped over her. It all makes sense now, she grinned. How did I not see this before? This had to be documented. Picking herself up off the floor, Lyra raced down the hall and found her journal in the office. Levitating it down from the shelf, she quickly started sketching the nearest quill she could find. Lyra? I heard a crash. Are you all right? Bonbon wandered into the room, rubbing her eyes. She stared at Lyra and the glowing quill scratching madly at the page. What are you doing? They designed it. It's meant for them to play, not us, Lyra muttered, not taking her eyes off the journal. It all makes so much sense. Bonbon shook her head and watched over her roommate's shoulder. Some kind of figure was taking shape. It was holding a lyre what seemed to be arms? The shape of the body wasn't one Bonbon had ever seen before. Maybe similar to a baby dragon, like the one that lived with Twilight Sparkle, but the limbs were elongated. The strings are much easier to pluck if you have fingers. I think it's similar to how I play it, actually. What I imagine while I'm doing it, at least. Lyra continued sketching. Bonbon couldn't tell if Lyra was explaining it to her, or if she was just talking to herself. They're too close together to play very well with hooves, and it wouldn't make sense for ponies to design an instrument that can only be played with magic. Lyra, is this another one of your theories about those? Bonbon's voice trailed off into a yawn. Oh my. Maybe I should try this when I'm more awake. Oh, keep this as reference.